How do you add custom separators between your scenes or sections in Scrivener 3 for Windows? Hi, my name's Juliet, and there are two ways to do this. One, you can just put them into your editor, for which you don't need my help at all. The other is to do it in Compile. Here's how that works. Get ready for a little bit of brain overload. But once you've worked all this out for the first time, if you always use the same format, you won't ever have to do it again. First, you'll need to make a custom format in Compile by selecting Duplicate and Edit. For more info on custom formats, you can check out this video here on Beginner Compile Customization. Next, go to the Separators section in the left-hand column. If you've been following along with other videos, you'll have seen this section before in specific circumstances, but here we're looking at the detail. On the left, you'll see a Default section up the top, which creates formats for all folders and all documents at once, which is fine for a simply formatted file, but not so good for something complex. Below that, you'll see all the different section layouts, which you can change independently. The settings for these are largely the same, but there are a couple of extras on the individual layouts. So first, we're going to look at the options in the pull-down menus. A single return is the equivalent of no space at all. So if you have your text in different documents for organisational reasons only, for example, but they're one continuous narrative flow, this is the option you'd want to pick. Empty line adds a blank line between the elements, as you might expect. Page break is obviously a page break, but this setting works differently depending on the type of output you're creating. For a Microsoft Word or other paper type output, it will create a page break. For an ebook, it will create a digital page break, which will usually show as an actual change of page. It also adds the item to the auto-generated table of contents and will become a part of the navigation options in an ebook. For a plain text output, it will simply insert 16 lines. Custom allows you to add text, which will be centered and will ignore indents, as long as the checkbox down the bottom remains selected. If you choose this option, you might want to change the font, also down the bottom of the screen, so that it matches the text. Don't be tempted to change it to something like Wingdings, because you want special characters. That won't work. If you want to use special characters, they need to be available in the normal fonts, although it's possible not all of these may be supported in all output formats, such as ebooks, especially those read on older devices. If you want to add extra returns in this box, you can use Shift and Enter. Plus, you don't have to use text. You can add images using a placeholder. How to do that will be covered in a separate video. Now, let's look at the separator section options, using the default section to start with. You'll see that folders have page breaks selected before sections and between sections, which is normal because these are usually chapters. Both settings are used because all groups of the same type, in other words all folders, are treated as a block. So before that block you want a page break to separate it from, say, the front matter, and then you want every folder to be a new chapter, so you need a page break between sections. This may be difficult to get your head around because the word section is used in so many different elements in Scrivener. Let's think about that with scenes, or section text section layouts. Before these, you might perhaps want an extra empty line space, which would be after the chapter heading. Then, between the section text layouts, you might want a decorative separator such as asterisks or an image. This probably isn't necessary for non-fiction because you'd probably have titles to do this job, taken from the binder. Then there's the override separator after. This will take precedence over any other instruction. We'll look at the implications of that later. Now let's look at the options for the individual section layouts, where you can customize those and override the default settings. Everything I've already discussed works the same, but you'll see you also have a blank line option. This is the separator option for those who don't want to split up all their scenes into separate documents, but the same applies for all text sections. It takes its cues from what you've put in the editor. Anything you have applied a custom style to won't be affected, but anything with no style will. unless you change the tick box setting at the bottom. What this does is adds the separator to any blank lines with no style applied, like this. I'm not going to demonstrate page breaks and empty lines, those are basically what you get normally. What I am going to do is add in a custom separator to certain section layouts and show what the override does. So if you want to use normal font special characters, then bring up the character map before you start. Otherwise, just type what you want into the custom box. I'm going to add a few things in and also show you something you shouldn't do. So here's the resulting word. Yes, those smiley faces are a little big. They probably need spaces between them. But can you see the other issue? Possibly not in this document. Because I added a custom separator before the title, there is no page break. That's fine in a run-on manuscript, but wouldn't be the norm for a paperback, so best not to change that setting. Finally, let's see what happens with the override. As you can see, it's completely gotten rid of the asterisks after all the text sections and added the custom separator at the end. It doesn't work the same as the before option. So the only way I can see this being useful is if you set the separators on all text sections in the default box, then for one individual section you use the override option. But you'd have to experiment. Honestly, I'd probably do that on the editing page if that's what I wanted. Next time I'll show you how to add that placeholder into the separator box, so you can get a little more adventurous with your separators. That video will be here once it's live.